Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I am coming back at you with another Wargaming in miniature video. In today's video, we're going to continue on with my 15mm World War II project updates. All right, now in today's update, what I'm going to do is basically show you some things I've been working on, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my mentality, how I'm going insane. No, how I adjusted my thinking to be more in line with the game that I'm getting ready to play. Right. So, okay, just as a caveat, I want you all to know that I'm working with a game called Battle Group. Okay, now I've played other games in 15mm. I played, and I'm just going to let you know, I played Command Decision in 20mm for a number of years, and it was an easy transition to 15mm because that was pretty much a 1-to-1. I took a 1/72 or 20mm model and I replaced it with a 15mm model. No problem. Same thing with the infantry. They were based 2 figures on a base, made a platoon, a few platoons, made a company, made a battalion. You're good. You got company commanders and stuff like that. Everything was company commanders. Could sometimes be based singly or doubly. I don't remember. But what I'm basically saying is that was a no-brainer. I switched over to 15mm, had a more variety of models, and then I, seeing that Command Decision, it was fun and everything, but the scale was just a little bit too large, right? Or maybe not too large. The scale was too... Well, let's back up. I felt the rules were too involved. Let's just say that. The rules were just, you rolled too many dice. The way you tracked hits on a platoon was by using colored chits. And depending on the quality level of the troop, you would put a different color down for their first hit. And then you would work your way down from those colors like green, yellow, red, destroyed. And like an elite troop would start with a green on his first hit, where a veteran might be a yellow, where an inexperienced troop might be a red on his first hit, etc. And easy to understand, it was just too many things on the table. I had chits all over the place. And then you issued orders for every one of your companies with these chits, and you have a whole tray full of chits. One says move, one says fire, one says rally, one says bull, one says, kiss your ass goodbye, whatever. There was a bunch of these chits, and then you had to have another chit that you covered your order chit with to conceal it from your opponent, and you placed all these orders down, and then when it was time to reveal your orders, you pulled all the lids off. This is a really good concept. I really liked that system. It was just too time consuming and too involved. I had a million different counters on the table, and so I was looking for something better. Right? Okay, so I found a game called Spearhead. And Spearhead, you could play in 15mm no problem. Everything from Command Decision transitioned to Spearhead on basically a 1-to-1 ratio. They had a base represented a platoon, a tank represented a platoon of tanks. The scale was exactly the same. I could play, not measurement scale, but the figure organization scale was exactly the same. So I figured I could even use the Command Decision scenarios that I had, which I've had quite a few. I could transition that over to Spearhead. Spearhead did 100% away with the order system of chits and the hit system with chits. They used a write your orders on a map before the battle starts for all your units, and you moved them in battalions, not companies. So you issued an order to a battalion, and based on the size of the battalion, 12 platoons or more would get a 12-inch command radius, where like anything less than that would get like a 6-inch command radius, which basically means the battalion commander would, I don't mean for this video to be an explanation of all these rules, but I'm getting to it, would be to your battalion commander would follow the arrow on the table that you drew on your map. Your opponent doesn't necessarily need to see your orders. That's really between you and your subconscious of how to move your troop. Now, your battalion commander is supposed to stay exactly on that line, but remember, your drawn map and the battlefield map might or might not be a photograph, right? You might have to hand draw your map, and not everybody's got a picture perfect. They're not an artist where they can draw the map. So what I would do as a referee would usually use like this is what I did. I used the when I played Command Decision, I used GeoHex, but that was for a much bigger type of game. And when I switched to Spearhead, believe it or not, I switched it to micro armor. I decided, you know what? I just want to play with some micro armor. I'll have, it'll look smaller. It'll be more to scale with battalions. I will have, because a Command Decision would take that 15 millimeter model, it'll move 12 inches and say that was a mile, right? And the 15 millimeter and the 12 inches didn't seem like that would be a mile. But on micro armor, it was a lot closer to being a lot further away, twice as far. So I basically did a big transition to micro armor. And I had gotten tons and tons of micro armor and eventually sold off my 20 millimeter stuff. I just said, screw it. I'm not ever going to play in 20 millimeter. I got 15 millimeter and I got micro armor. And then I found, and Spearhead works really good. I really like Spearhead. It's an excellent game. And I still like it even today. But there was something there's something lacking in the miniature figures. I felt like anything under 15 millimeter was just too damn small, right? It's like moving around chits or counters on a battle. Even Squad Leader used micro armor in their advanced ASL. They had ASL Stalingrad. I don't remember what it was, but they basically played Squad Leader on these big hexes, and it's a board game with big hexes, and you would take micro armor figures and move them around as if they were chits. And that's exactly what that reminded me of, playing on a table with micro armor. And I had even gone through and made, and I still have in the garage, a ton of these 4-inch hexes that GHQ sells to make terrain. And I made a whole terrain table out of these hexes, and you can move them, and they're geomorphic. You can shift them and shuffle them and stuff. But I felt like micro armor was just too small, right? So I decided I'm going to commit to 15 millimeter. I said I'm going to get rid of my micro armor. I'm going to get rid of my 20 millimeter stuff. I'm going to go with the 15 millimeter. This is before my bolt action escapade, but so I found another set of rules because I didn't want to go back to Command Decision because of the complexities. I mean, it's not a hard game. Don't get me wrong. It's like super easy. It's just so much stuff on the table. It was just it took away from the why play a board game. That game is designed for a computer game. You know, keeping track of all your records and all the chits and the hits and all that, the orders, and it was just too much, right? So I tried to find something else, and that's why I found Spearhead. So I thought, you know, why don't I play some Spearhead in 15 millimeter? It didn't look right, right? Like I said, the distances and the building sizes and everything, it just didn't have that right feeling. It just didn't have it. So I continued my hunt for the perfect miniature game. I found a game out there called Battlefront, right? About the same time, I found a game called Flames of War. So I picked up both copies. Battlefront is a book about this size, right? And that's all it is. Just a book about this size. This is Battle Group, but that game was called Battlefront. It had army lists, and you could find scenarios online. It had cards, because they sold these campaign books and or campaign card sets, basically. And those cards were like really small, maybe playing card size, 2 by 3.5 or something like that, 2 1/4 by 3.5. They were pretty small cards, but that card would have infantry platoon or SS platoon, or it would say Sherman tank or whatever. And this game was still designed as one stand of figures was a platoon, right? So they still kept the command decision spearhead size, right? And I said, okay, great. But it was kind of designed for 15 millimeter. The way all the pictures were in 15 millimeter, the measurements they understood were basically if you had troops in 15 millimeter, everything was designed for 15 millimeter. Dice rolls were pretty easy. It's I shoot you, I roll some dice, you blow up. Or you shoot me, I roll some dice, I blow up, whatever. And then there was like morale checks and all that stuff. So they had everything in the game, but it didn't feel like I had a ton of this extra stuff on the table. I didn't have chits. I didn't have order counters and all this stuff. They didn't concern themselves so much with orders. If I'm going back and trying to remember, you gave your troop an order, and it had to, but you didn't draw anything on a map or anything like that. You basically wrote it down on their sheet that you kept off the table. It was like, attack this town. And it was up to the player to decide how he wanted to attack that town. So that seemed like it was kind of open. It opened it up to let the player make decisions like upon what he sees. So like if he sees a tank on the left, you're allowed to kind of adjust your flank and go and attack that tank on the left, because you needed to do that to be able to get to the town or whatever. Now, if you wanted to just change it entirely, like you see your right flank getting destroyed and you want to take your battalion and not go after this town, instead go after that town, you would roll command dice to see if you could change your commands. That reminded me of Spearhead too, but it was a much easier game mechanically on the table. There wasn't a ton of extra counters. So I kind of liked that game, but it still felt like it was, maybe because it was easier, it was lacking the nuance or the detail. And its artillery rules were probably half the book. It had so many artillery rules for indirect fire, time on target, your linear barrage, or a rolling barrage, or a square barrage, which is all well and good to be I think the author of the game was probably ex-military artillery, because all the emphasis in that game was on artillery, which they called the artillery king of battle, so maybe it was wise to do that. And it didn't really slow the game down very much, because you didn't, well, personally, I didn't use a whole lot of artillery. There was, when I played some campaign games and stuff like that, we had artillery off map, and then they would shoot on. So it was good to have all those rules, but you had to make a bunch of smoke templates, and you had to make like artillery templates for every caliber of artillery. So 80 millimeter mortars had their own templates. The 105 artillery had their templates. The 155s had theirs. The 210s, the 120 mortar. Every artillery piece had its own little template, which is not a big deal. You just pull the right template out and put it out. And we made them out of cardboard, so it was like super easy to make them. And then if they, if you had multiple tubes, you would have a template per tube, and you would line them up. Never mind. Lots of artillery templates. So there was something about that game that just didn't sit right with me. So I explored Flames of War. Flames of War is I don't want to badmouth Flames of War, because it has a place in wargaming. Flames of War is a good game. It is top tier good game. It's just not for me. And one of the reasons why it's not for me is because it's a tournament-based game. The army lists are very commercialized. It's like, if you want this scout troop, you have to buy a box set, or you have to have, okay, let's say tank platoon, right? And again, it's a man-to-man game. So a tank platoon might be 5 tanks, right? Where a tank platoon in Spearhead or Battlefront or Command Decision or any of those was 1 tank, right? So I could play those division, well, never really played a whole division, but we had regiments against regiments on the table. So I could have like multiple battalions with multiple companies, because you're moving platoons around. But when you start talking about individual men, you know, a company winds up being 100 models, you know, or more, 150 models. And that's okay, but I don't know, it's like, it's too rigid. It's too rigid because they know that they're a tournament game. It's kind of like Warhammer 40K. They're extremely rigid on what you're allowed to have in an army, because they know the game is played competitively in tournaments. And because of that, and there's nothing wrong with the rules per se. The rules are good. If I could just get past the fact that it's a tournament game, I would enjoy it more, probably. The ranges in Flames of War are tournament ranges. What that means is I can play a Flames of War game on a 4x6 table. I could have multiple companies on my side. You could have multiple companies on your side, and we still couldn't shoot each other, because like infantry or whatever shooting 12 inches, come on now. You know, even if it's 24 inches, what does that remind me of? Warhammer. Okay, so I roll a bunch of dice to shoot you, and I get a bunch of hits, and then you roll a bunch of dice to save, get saving throws, and I don't dislike saving throws. I just dislike point value games just bother me. I don't know what it is. I got a broken gear in my head or something. I don't know. Here it is. Let's go back about 3 years. tournament games grind my gears. For those of you that don't know about those videos, you would catch on. Okay, so what am I trying to get at? I'm doing a big exploration here. So I found that 15 millimeter models are the perfect visual size on the table. I can put a number of figures on the table, and Flames of War was man to man. So one tank is one tank, one man is one man. So I kind of liked it because of that, but I didn't like it because of the rigidity of the game, of the army lists and the lack of, I don't know, a rifle shooting 12 inches just didn't feel good to me. So my quest continued, right? As you know, I played a lot of Spearhead games, a ton of Command Decision games. This is throughout my Wargaming career. And then I found Battlefront, really liked that set of rules. Even though the Flames of War company is called Battlefront, that's not the name of their game. There is a company out there, I don't remember what the name of the company is, but its name of the game is Battlefront. That was pretty fun as well, but it might have gotten just a little bit too artillery complicated. And then I found a game called Operation Overlord. Right? Operation Overlord brought me back to 20 millimeter. I looked up Operation Overlord. It's a man-to-man game, 20 millimeter. Low army list. I mean, no army list, really. They have scenarios, which I was like, whoa, I like it. Because they did have army lists, but that was like a download from their website, you know, right? They had, Italeri backed this company, Alto Zero, and Italeri printed pamphlets for the Operation Overlord and put them in their model kits. So when you bought a model that said on the box Alto Zero compatible, you would open it up, you'd pull the model out, you'd pull the instruction manual to build the model, but also there'd be another manual that told you about that vehicle in the game, gave you stats and stuff like that. I thought that was really cool. But it brought me back to 20 millimeter. I guess you could play it in 15 millimeter, but I don't know, it just didn't feel right. I played it a bunch of times. It also had a card system. Now, when you buy the box set of Operation Overlord, the box set came with these cards that you drew cards to find out what you were allowed to do on your turn. That was a unique system, but it didn't last long. I played maybe 5 games, and then I realized I didn't like the card system. I even played a game called Test a Battle. Something like that. But what it did was every man in your army had his own individual card. And so you only played with like a squad or 2. So you're looking at maybe 10 or 20 cards in your deck, right? But if your man, like let's say the squad leader, was more experienced than his men, he might get 2 cards. So you would put those in the deck, and then you would draw a card, and it would say Johnny. And so then, and on the card, it'll have Johnny's weapon and what that weapon can do and how many grenades he's carrying. So you could mark off grenades on this card. And so it served 2 purposes. So it basically gave you his stats, like how far he could move and all that stuff. But all of your regular guys would have the exact same stats, right? And the weapons would all have the exact same stats. It's just that if you're more experienced, you might have better stats and you might have more cards. I I thought that was pretty good. I think it was Test of Battle, I think was what it was called. But I didn't like having a bunch of cards on the table where you got to draw to see what you got to do. Then I played a game called 48 Tactic, which it basically had the card system again. It brought the card system back to life, changed it up a little bit. Now everybody's got their own unique stats, and you only played with like 4 guys on the table, right? So you're really only playing a fire team, and that is a different type of game. So that was a really fun and exciting game, but it wasn't at the level strategically that I wanted to be at. I didn't want to be at the fire team level. I also don't want to be at the division level. I want to be somewhere in between, right? So battalion level. That's about what I want to play. I want to play with a battalion on the table, and then I'll be content. But I also, because of that, I still want to play man to man. And so Flames of War kept coming back to me as that's probably the only thing that I can use to do what I want to do. And then I discovered this battle group, right? Hadn't seen it before. This is a recent development for me. I'm not familiar with these rules at all. I said, okay, what are they about? They're this and that. And I was like, okay, let me order it. I ordered it. And then I also ordered another game called Micro Armor Squad, right? So they say that's a man-to-man game, a tank-on-tank game. I'm like, I played Micro Armor back when I was in high school. So I said, okay, that's interesting. It's Micro Armor, but maybe I can convert it, to 15s or whatever. When it came in, I looked at it and I said, this is Micro Armor with a different name. Nope. Put it on the shelf. I think it's right there. Okay, so nope. And then the battle group came in. I started reading. I started looking. I said, oh, man to man. Cool. Scenarios looking like maybe a company per side. Okay, that's right about where I want to be. I looked at the mechanics of the shooting, and I looked at the order giving. Excuse me. I looked at the mechanics for the shooting. I looked at the mechanics for the order giving, and I was like, "This is really good." I'm really excited about Battle Group. Okay, so what did I do? I said, I'm gonna jump into this with 2 feet. So I jumped into Battle Group, and I started ordering 15mm models once again, right? Because all my 15mm model collections, gone. All my Micro Armor collections, almost gone. 90% of it's gone. I still got a bunch of Micro Armor, but nothing worth mentioning. Because before I got into Battle Group and the 15mm, I was committed to bolt action. Bolt action's a man-to-man game. I like it. But I can't really do a battalion on the table. It's too many. First of all, it'd be too many models, so it would take up too much space on the table. But the rules are really good, extremely good, if I wanted to do a platoon against a platoon. That game is superb, right? If I wanted to do a company, I'm really stretching it, right? But if I want to do a battalion, there's just no way. That would have to be like a multiplayer game where everybody plays a battalion, a platoon, and you're looking at like 9 platoons to get a battalion on the table. No, there's just no way. Plus, it's really designed for the larger figures. Could I play it in 15mm? I probably could, but like I said, I want to play a more meatier game, right? And that's why I found Battle Group. So I find Battle Group, and I'm like falling in love with it. I order a bunch of models. I said, what do I want to play? I want to play German SS. I want to play Fallschirmjägers. I want to play Grenadiers. I want to play Panzer Division, Volksgrenadiers. You know, I want to play the British paras. I want to do American paras, American infantry. I want to play armored divisions. I don't know. My mind is just everywhere, right? Do I want to play Russians? No. Zero desire to play Russians. Do I want to play Afrika Korps? I got about a 10% desire to play Afrika Korps. Do I want to play 8th Army? Probably about a 10% desire to play 8th Army. So do I want to play those? Would I be willing to play those? Yes, but that's not really what I wanted to do. So I said, where can I get the best models? And this is what I'm getting at on my mind. You know, it's taken me a while to get to it, but my mind had a big changeover. I said, okay, the best place to get models, Old Glory. So I had done a lot of 15 millimeter command decision with Old Glory models, right? But that's because I had not seen, and I used a little bit of the Flames of War models. I really liked the Flames of War vehicles back in the day. Remember, this was like a long time ago. I thought that was back when the Flames of War vehicles were resin. And I was like, okay, these are good. So let me order some Command Decision. Let me order some Flames of War. And just looking around, I saw that there was this company out there called Plastic Soldier Company. I had not really done much with Plastic Soldier Company. I think I bought one 72nd box back in the day just to get and paint, and I thought they were good. So I said, you know what? I bet you their 15s are going to be good too. So I ordered a few of those, and I looked around some of these other companies. There's another company called Forged in Battle. I saw that they've got some models, maybe a little pricey, but you know, I saw that they had them. So I got these models in, right? So I got some Old Glory, got some Plastic Soldier, got some Flames of War models in. And the first thing I noticed was the Flames of War models are a little extra. They're a little extra, right? They're a little bigger than they probably are supposed to be. But I like that. I like my models to be a little bit bigger when you're talking about 15 millimeter. I looked at my first unit of Plastic Soldier was Americans, infantry, just straight up American infantry. They were skin and bones. Their rifles were super thin, but that's because they were accurate to that scale. But I was like, I don't want accuracy. I want them to be a little bit thicker so they're more durable on the table and you can see what they are from a distance. Because looking at a Plastic Soldier rifle, not rifleman, like submachine gunner, I can't tell if he's a submachine gunner or if he's a BAR or if he's a rifle, whatever. I can't really tell. But when you look at your Flames of War guys, you can tell. You can tell exactly what kind of troop it is. And I also was thinking, well, you can or can't base them individually. And so I mounted some Grenadiers. I looked at the army lists, and that's why I got these books out. We're going to take a look real quick at that. I looked at the army lists, and I saw that the troops were, you know, in their squads, you know, and I'm thinking, okay, what kind of a scenario do I want to do? I said, I found a scenario that I had done before with Operation Overlord, World War II in 172nd. I said, you know what? I could probably do that in 15 millimeter. It won't be too hard. And I looked at the number of troops. Not too big of a deal. A couple of 3 platoons per side. I was like, okay, that's like only 100 and something figures per side. I should be able to paint those up in no time. You know, there was no tanks, no Jeeps or Kuba wagons or anti-tank guns or anything like that. Basically, it's all infantry. So I said, okay, let's jump on that. Let's do that. Boom. And I looked at the army lists and I saw how they were organized, and I put some figures together. And then I got some German Grenadiers in, and these German from Plastic Soldier. And then I noticed that the German Grenadiers are proportionate, or they look very appropriate for Flames of War, so that they were very similarly shaped, bulk-wise, right? And so I was like, oh, these plastic soldier guys are going to work perfect, right? So, and I decided to mount them. After a little while, I was using Litco bases, which were the size of the old Flames of War bases, and they're flat on the top, and you glue your guy on, but then you had to like putty it or whatever to get the base to be pretty flat, and then you'd flock it and all that stuff. A little bit extra work. So I said, you know what? Screw those guys. I'm going to get some Flames of War Grenadiers because I want to see what they look like. And they came in, they looked good. They had their little bases with the holes already pre-made in them. So I put a bunch of those together. But while I was putting those models together, the ones I was planning on using, I said, this is crazy. Why do I have 5 on one base and 3 on another base? Why don't I just put 4 and 4? You know, I mean, it's just smart, right? So that's what I did. I started putting a machine gun with 4 guys on the base, and the squad with 4 guys on the base, and then and everybody else fell into place. And I was like, okay, good. These guys look good. I spent like years, weeks, basing them and painting them and all that stuff. And I did the same thing with my paratroopers. I said, why do they only have 3 guys on this base? And they got like 9 guys in a squad. I could easily just put 1 with the commander and put 1. I could go 4-4 and then take an extra dude and give it to the machine gun. So I'd have a 12-man squad with 3 bases of 4. Perfect. It's just logical, right? So I did that, and then I did that, and then I did that. And so I thought it was good. I thought everything was good. Everything was ready to go. Okay, and then I started to do these boot camps. I do the boot camps mainly to have content on the channel, but also to kind of like share my thoughts and understandings of the rules. You know, as I learn them, I can share my learning process with you so that you can learn the rules as well. Okay, so I'm about halfway through my boot camp, and I get to the part where it talks about observation and shooting and all that. And it talks about teams of 3 men or less are harder to spot, right? But once you make them a 4-man team, now they're easy to see. Not easy, but they're like normal, right? Because you get a -1 if it's 3 or less. And it also talks about disconnecting them from your squad. This is part of the army list rules or whatever, but I can disconnect a squad, the team, drop it off, like maybe in a building or something, as the rest of the guys move out. And I was thinking to myself, if I have a German squad of 4 and 4, right, and I drop that team off to be the machine gun team in the building, miniature-wise, I'm stuck with putting 4 guys in that building. And the reason why is they're not individually mounted, for one thing, because I'm using Flames of War bases. I'm multi-basing them, which the rules say you can multi-base. And that's what I read at the beginning. It says it doesn't matter how you base them. And that's not true, right? It does matter how you base them. But only because 4 guys are getting stuck in the building and the rest of the guys are going out to take the objective or whatever. Now, when I drop that 4 guys off, now if I drop them off behind my guys, they're supposed to reach out and touch someone with their rate of fire. which if they are a machine gun team, they could technically maybe shoot further than 30 inches, which the rifle shoots. And what I had done was taken one of those guys out of the 4 and made him a team leader and gave him an MP40. So effectively eliminating him from helping the squad, because he's more than 10 inches behind the rest of the squad. His submachine gun only has a 10-inch range. So now I'm stuck with just the 3-man team anyway, right? And now the assault squad, or the maneuver squad, is only 4 men. And it's technically, if you were to re-engineer it, it should be 3 guys getting dropped into the building and 5 guys going out. Something clicked in my head and said, oh crap, I based my guys wrong, right? So what I've done, and this, what I'm going to do is I've got a camera sitting here, and I'm going to adjust. I'm going to put it down on the table. I'm going to show you that how I rebased them. I have already rebased them. I talked about this last week, I think, and over the course of the week or so, not the week, just a few days, I've been busy rebasing them, and not just rebasing them, but reorganizing them into the proper organization. And I'll show you each of those. I had to go through all my units. I was thinking I was just going to do my grenadiers, but my paratroopers were broke as well, and the glider troops were broke. So I did all 3 of them, rebased them. And while I was rebasing them, I decided, you know what, I'm going to touch these guys up. I'm going to repaint some figures here and there. And so basically, I just applied some wash to them tonight. That should be dry enough for me to kind of show them off. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited by doing that, and by understanding what the rules are trying to do. It really set my mind at ease. I don't know what it was. It was like I've been worrying about it for the last couple of weeks. Are these based properly? Are these? No, they're not. Man, I'll just work my way through it. I'll just use 4 guys because it's just logical. But then I realized the mechanics of the game demand that I don't do it that way. I mean, you could play it that way. It's just that I'm penalizing certain sides because of my own limitations that I'm imposing on those units. Because, like I said, I took that guy away, and I basically eliminated him from attacking and from shooting. So I felt like I gave him double jeopardy by moving that one figure onto the other base. So I rebased him, right? Okay, we got that. Plus, I had a pack of rings, and I'm going to show you my rings here, that I was planning on using. I am still planning on using for my casualties, right? So I got these little rings. They're about 10 millimeters on the interior of the circle, and close to 16 millimeters. Well, maybe not even 16. Maybe 15 millimeters, 15 or 16 millimeters on the outside circle. So you're looking at maybe a 2 millimeter thick ring. And then you could just put it on top of one of your men when he dies, right? And you can get these from Old Glory. They sell, what is that sub company? Wargaming Accessories, I think, is the name of the company that Old Glory sells their bases. And in part of their bases, they got casualty caps. And part of the casualty caps are rings. So I thought about going back and reordering them. But then I had an epiphany. I wonder if anybody else in the world sells rings like this, little plastic rings. So I looked around, and I found a company that sells them in bags of 100, for the same price as Old Glory sells them in packs of like 40 or something like that. And I was like, okay, but and when I looked on their site, they had them for sale for clear rings, right? Instead of white, they had clear ones and white ones. And I thought about it. If I got a clear one and put it out as a casualty, would it look better or would it not look better, right? This looks, it's kind of neutral. I put it on the table. It's obvious he's dead. It doesn't really make the models look bad or anything. It doesn't, not like a big red cap on them or a big green cap on them, really make a difference. But this little white ring, when you put it on, it kind of sinks down into the terrain and the way I've got him based. And it makes it obvious he's dead, but it doesn't, it's not like a million counters on the table like my old Command Decision. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to order some. Because I thought that the 40 that I had, because I had only had one bag, might not be enough for a whole game. And if I ever do wind up playing a bigger game, like a battalion level game, I'm definitely going to need more than 40, maybe. I don't know. I don't know yet. Really have never experimented with it yet. But just to make sure, I went ahead and I said, you know what, I'm just going to order another pack from this company, white rings at this scale. I mean, they make them twice as big as well, but I don't need those. But I could probably use those on like 28 millimeter models if I needed to do that, but I don't. So I ordered them, and this is the original, where this one is white, but it's kind of semi-translucent. I mean, it's got a little bit of a clear effect. But then the ones I ordered and I got in are solid white. Boom. So I'm trying to hold these up where you could see them side by side and see what I'm talking about. It's having a hard time. You probably can't see that. And maybe I'll show them to you when I put this camera on the table. But like this one's like semi-translucent and this one's white, but not big enough to really concern myself with. And now I've got like 140 of them. And are they slightly bigger? I mean, yes, but less than a millimeter, right? It's not noticeable, right? So I got those. I put them in a tub. I also got some more tubs because I fell in love with these. And then let me show you these figures. And what we'll do is let me move this out of the way, and let me move the rings out of the way, and give me a second to adjust the camera, and then we'll take a look at how I rebased these. All right, guys, so I got my troops in these little boxes here so that I can keep them organized. But this box here is my paratroopers, right? And then these next two boxes are the gliders, and then the bottom boxes here are my grenadiers. So as you know, the paratroopers are different uniform, different quality of troops and all that. These guys are veterans. So we've got our mortar, which is a 3-man team, which it always was, so that didn't need to be rebased. But here's a medium machine gun, and it has the 3 models on it, right? It's got the 3 paratroopers on there. Looking good. And then okay, and then this is another one, and you notice I just kind of alternated where the standing guy is. That is one I had to rebase because I had 4 guys on the base, and so I had to swap them over to a 3-figure base. Now, that does leave the rest of the squad with 9 guys, right? Now, I contemplated making 3-figure bases, right? Which would work just fine, but I decided to go ahead and go with a 4-figure base and a 5-figure base. I figured that would be my 9 guys, right? Instead of a bunch of 3-figure bases. And then the other squad would do the same. So we've got a 5, a 4, and a 3. And that equals the squads. Okay. Now I also considered doing like a 3-figure base and a 4-figure base and then a 2-figure NCO base. But I decided that I don't need separate NCO bases because they don't have any rules in the game that affect anything, right? I don't need to have, I don't really need to concern myself with that. Now, do I want to put a guy with a Thompson in this squad? Absolutely, because you're allowed to do that. And and that just kind of differentiates that guy. He's obviously the NCO, right? And then there's your 2-man bazooka team, which I didn't have to change because that's just a 2-man team. And then the command element is supposed to be 6 guys. Now, I could have done it in 2 ways. I could have done what I did, which was a 4-man like escort team and a 2-man officer, right? Or I could have did 2 3-man groups, right? And I decided, now this is just my own personal decision. I made the officer a 2-man figure team. So it becomes very obvious, except for the bazooka team, obviously, but it becomes very obvious who the officer is because he's on a very small team. He's got 2 men, right? Even though all 6 of these guys have to operate together, they don't get the privilege of splitting up. I didn't want to put all 6 on a base, and I didn't want to put 5 and 1, even though you could probably get away with that. I just figured 2 on a small base and a 4-man escort. So I don't get confused by who the officer is. And this will become important in some of these other squads or other platoons. And so that's a paratrooper platoon right there. That's the whole paratrooper platoon from Battlefront. You got your platoon leader with his escort. You got you got 2 squads of 12 men, and one of them is a 9-man infantry squad and a 3-man machine gun team. And this one can be broke off separately, right? So the machine gun can go do its own thing. Once you do that, then it starts getting its own orders. Also, once you do that, it also will cause a battle counter loss if you lose it. So that's a risk reward kind of thing. And then the 3-person mortar team and the bazooka team. I fell in love with that way of doing the paratroopers. I thought that was logical. Okay, so let's take a look at the gliders, right? In this scenario, you get 2 platoons of gliders and a weapons platoon and a company headquarters. Okay, so let's take a look at that. The company headquarters is all it is just a bunch of riflemen in a squad. How many were there? Well, there was 10. So I figured, after rearranging my figures, I gave them 2 5-man teams, right, for a total of 10 guys. And, rebase them and put the figures and everything. So there's 10 guys. Now, one of these 10 guys, which it's this guy, is a submachine gun. So he's the NCO of that headquarters element. Okay, the weapons platoon. The weapons platoon is supposed to be two medium machine guns, which I did exactly the same way as the paratroopers, right? We got the medium machine gun and the extra guy, and 2 light mortars. And also, these guys are 3-man teams, mortars. Perfect. That's the weapons platoon, and that's everything from the weapons platoon. No platoon leader or anything. Okay. 2 medics. Well, I had these 2 guys individually mounted already, and these guys are Old Glory models. These guys are all battle front, Flames of War guys. But these 2 guys are Old Glory because they're actually medic figures, and because the medics operate independently on the table, and when they're needed, they move up to troops to prevent casualties. So, yeah, they need to be individually mounted, just like every other troop is supposed to be. But because of the way they're used in battle, I individually mounted them. Okay. There's 2 FOs. There's an FO, and then there's a FSU, which is a fire support unit. I mounted both of them and because I already had them mounted this way, I just left them. These guys are a mix of plastic soldier. I think all these guys are plastic soldier. But because 2 of them are having these giant radios on their back, I thought these guys would be perfect as FOs, and like this guy's talking on a handset. I thought they would be perfect for your fire control / FOs. And because they're on the wood bases, they kind of stand out a little bit as different. So that makes them pretty good. Where this guy, 2 figures. One of these guys is an officer. I don't think both of them are officers. So the one that's not an officer, I don't think I'm going to leave on the table like this. I think I'm going to replace it with a Jeep. They're both going to be replaced with a Jeep. That's what I'm saying. But one of them is an officer. Okay. And then this guy, 2 figures. One guy's carrying a radio. One guy's pointing with a pistol or whatever. He's actually what's called a senior officer. So basically, he gets a bonus to the officer role. Okay, great. Okay, and then we get into this is the big change, really. This group here. There are 2 platoons of 3 squads each, and there's a BAR in every squad. That's right. BAR in every squad. And so what I did was, and these squads can't separate, so they operate together all the time anyway. I put the BAR and the NCO on a 4-figure base. So if it's got 4 figures on it, okay, not those 2. If it's got 4 figures on it, it probably has a BAR and an NCO, right? So, BAR, NCO, right? Okay. 4 figures, and there's 3 squads, so there would be 10 of these. I'm sorry, I can't do math. 6 of these. So there's going to be 6 squads, right? But these can all be dropped off, but it specifically says in the Army list, 4-man BAR team. It doesn't say 3-man medium machine gun team or 3-man BAR team. It actually says 4-man BAR team. So I mounted it like the Army list states. That way I'm not... That way I'm closely following the Army list, or at least I feel good about it. Okay, but on the squad size, the maneuver element, there are 6 men. And the rules say that each element can have a submachine gun. So like I said, I put the NCO with the BAR. So there's a Thompson and a BAR and a couple of riflemen per base. And then the 6-man team will also have 5 riflemen and 1 submachine gun. But did I want to put 6 guys on a single base? No, it would just be too crowded. Did I want to do a 4 and a 2? I said no, because then it would look like there's a bunch of officers out there on the field. So I decided to take the small base and just put 3 figures per small base. So we have a 3-figure base and a 3-figure base, where a total of 6 guys, Thompson right there, and just riflemen with the rest of them. So it kind of makes the squad look pretty unique, where it's obvious that this is a different group than this. So if I want to drop these guys off, these guys would just stay together. If I don't want to drop it off, I don't have to. I can leave the entire squad functioning like that. Now, the glider squads are 10 men, as opposed to paratroopers, which are 12. And so I did all the squads with a submachine gun and the rest in rifles. Okay, so submachine gun, rest in rifles. And I tried to mix and match and do a variety of poses and stuff like that. I went through, because since I was rebasing them, I basically broke them off of their old bases, because I had them mounted 3 or 4 on these and 2s on the larger bases. So I just had to break them up, reorganize, and get all of them suckers. So the squads look good to me now. I'm looking at that and I'm saying that is obviously, 2 elements if I want to break it up, or 1 10-man squad if I don't. And then each platoon has a platoon leader. So I took a look at the platoon leader, and he is an officer. So I could have mounted him, and it's a 4-figure team, right? So I could have said 2 guys and then 2 guys and stick them together, and they would look a lot like maybe this, 2 figures and 2 figures, making a total of 4. But I didn't want to do that. I said, I'm just going to give these guys 4 figures. And I put a guy with a pistol in his hand to make it kind of obvious that there is an officer in that team. Okay, so, but not only that, I gave this guy beside him a Thompson. And in these rules, it says he's got a rifle. Right? It says rifle, 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 and 1 submachine gun. It's just that this pistol guy really draws your eyes to it that he is an officer. And, he just looks like an officer. Doesn't have all the gear that everybody else has. So these are my gliders. I think they look good. I mean, I am extremely happy. I redid their helmets with a different olive drab. I tested about 4 different olive drabs colors until I found one that I was happy with. And the olive drab that I was happy with is this AK olive drab. This, I fell in love with this olive drab. I've got like, I don't know where it is up here, but I've got, maybe this is it. Yeah, I've got the Vallejo olive drab and then AK olive drab. You can see a major difference in the olive drabs, right? I like that it looks more green brown. What do they call that? Brown violet. I like that color. Where this olive drab just looks a lot like Russian green. I don't know. It just doesn't come off as the right olive drab where I liked this one. Okay, so now that's another thing. I actually did a lot of repainting on those grenadiers as well, and I'll talk to you about those. This video is going on extremely long, but I just want to share, my thoughts and how far along I've come with my figures. Remember, I've already painted these grenadiers, and then I moved on to my Battlefront grenadiers, and then I realized I needed a rebase. And I thought about it, and I said, you know what? My original plastic soldier guys were based properly, right? I based them according to the army list, and when I moved over to the Flames of War figures, I said, I broke them, basically. I started painting them, or I started arranging them in the incorrect order. Okay, so now when I so I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go get my plastic soldier guys and see if I can salvage or reduce the amount of rebasing. And in the process, I realized that I hadn't really finished painting them. I mean, they were fully painted, but there were some things about them that were incomplete. And since I was already repainting the helmets on my Americans and redoing some khaki and rewashing them and stuff like that, because I did apply a little bit more wash because I wanted to darken in the really, the gaps between their the gaps between their gear and their clothing and stuff. And now they look really good. I'm really happy. These guys didn't. These guys looked very generic, very dark, which is okay, but I realized I needed to touch them up. And then I thought about it. I said, if I'm going to repaint them, I'm not going to repaint them generic. I'm going to be very specific, because I've got that other group of grenadiers that are painted up that I can always rebase in the future. But since I'm making these guys specifically for the 91st Division, the 1058 Regiment, I said, let me just do a little bit of book learning and a little research, because the book I was working out of is the D-Day book. And the D-Day book talks about the 21st Panzer Division, and it has grenadiers, and you could just build grenadiers out of those, right? And that's what I had originally done. But then Beyond the Beaches has an infantry division, also a Luftwaffe field division is in the Beyond the Beaches, knowing that the 91st is actually supposed to be what they call an air landing division or a Luftwaffe field division. I said, you know what? I bet you they're not painted properly, right? Because my research was kind of all over the place. So I jumped in and I took a look at their Luftwaffe field divisions, and I realized, yep, instead of field gray, these guys use a lot of field blue. They do use field gray, but they also use field blue, which is kind of a Luftwaffe uniform style color. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to take those models and I'm going to touch them up. I'm going to fix some of the stuff. And I also looked at the Luftwaffe camo smocks, which is a little bit different than the Grenadier camo smocks. So I said, you know what? I'm going to repaint those a little bit too. I'm going to add a few colors or change this and that. And I also changed the helmet paint camo. And I also changed the gas mask color. And I went through and basically repainted them. Not 100%, but basically touched them up. It took a day or two. So let me take a look. Let me show you what I did with these guys. Now, in this game, in this scenario, there is only 3 platoons. They're all at full strength, but that's pretty much all there is. There are 2 81mm mortars, which these are the 81mm mortars that I got from Battlefront. Because, you know, and I think these guys look pretty good. You tell me, but yeah, I think they look pretty good. And so you get 280, well, I say 81, but they're 8 centimeter for the Germans. And then there's snipers. There's this one guy here that I painted from my plastic soldier company, and I basically turned him into just an individual guy on a rifle, you know, on a round base. I'm going to build a blind, but now I actually have German sniper models that came in today, and I'll be showing those off here in a future video, but I'm going to replace this guy with an actual sniper model. But failing that, I do have a guy ready to go to pretend like he's a sniper. Okay. Now the FO, because they have an FO as well, I have a guy with a gigantic radio and a guy here with binoculars in his hands. And remember, 90% of these guys are plastic soldier. This just happens to be on a Litco base. So again, it's a little bit different than the other guys. So it lets me know that he's probably the sniper. Not the sniper, the FO. And there is platoons. I'm going to try to get this guy out of the way because it might be a little hard to see. But these platoons, they have 3 squads, and the squads have 8 men in them, right? And part of that is a machine gun team, which I got these machine gun teams, guy carrying extra ammo, camo smock. This assistant's got a camo smock. He's got helmet cover, you know, and he's got a helmet cover, but this guy went ahead and painted his helmet. And the helmet cover and the painted helmets do have a slight variation on their color. Not much, but enough. And okay, so there's 3 all mounted on Litco, but I did that before, and I said, you know what, I'm not going to change it. I mean, it doesn't really matter. You know, it doesn't have to be on a Flames war base. It doesn't have to be on one of these guys. It's because it's not about the base. It's all about the base. No, it's not. Okay, so that's 1 platoon worth of machine guns, or 3 squads, and then the rest of the squad is on a 5-figure base, which I stuck an NCO in there. So you got your 8-man squad on 2 bases, And if I ever have to, this is where the fingers come into play. If I ever need to drop 3 figures off, I'll still have 5 figures for the assault or the maneuver or whatever. And so that is 3 squads of 8. Super easy to move around on the table, you would think, right? And then, now luckily, Plastic Soldier Company gave me 9 machine guns. But then again, remember that Plastic Soldier Company, figure company, is also the company that sells Battle Group. So they know how big their platoons are supposed to be. So they gave me enough machine guns to be able to do a full company of 3 platoons. Missing one. Nope, here it is. Okay, so there's my 9 8-man squads. And each platoon comes with an officer and his escorting squad. So just like the Americans, I put my officer on a 2-figure base, and I put an accompanying escort of 4 figures. You'll also notice that the officer is wearing a Luftwaffe uniform. You might not be able to see that, but he's got the field blue. You can see the field blue on this his radioman's pants, his helmet, right? Okay. Okay, so we got the escorting squad, we got the officer, right? We've got the 3 platoons. I got the 2 mortars, the sniper, and the FO. And that's the German unit that's present at this scenario that we're playing. And you probably have already seen my Sherman tanks. I've got 1 million of them. And one of those will be at the battle as well. So troop-wise, I think we are done. Take a look at the mortars. The mortarmen, you know, they've got the, I gave them their field blue pants. I did not put everybody with a camouflage helmet, even though that's a painted camouflage. These guys are field blue helmets. I intermixed them throughout. You might be able to see that on the camera, that there's an intermix of field blue and camo covers and camo paint. So, oh, he's a mortar. I was like, where does this guy go? There you go. Okay, I think that gets you updated. Okay, let me finish this update real quick. Terrain map. The map still needs to be finished. I have the Lafir farm needs to be textured. What else? The slopes around all the low ground, the slopes that go down to low ground, they already have flock. But I want to do more than just flock. I want to put like scrubs and shrubberies and stuff like that around all of the low ground. So I still need to do that. But other than that, I think the tiles are all completely finished. So that should probably take me a day or 2 to do that. Then they'll be done. Figures, I just finished these this afternoon. I probably will I still want to go in and hit all these figures with a dull coat because I just recently repainted them and put a wash on them. And you might or might not notice that the Army Painter washes leave like a little glossy residue on them sometimes. Just this guy kind of really stands out. You can kind of see how glossy that helmet is. Yeah, I want to touch that down and bring that level of gloss down. Yeah, I really like these troops. The way the mixture of the field gray uniforms, the camo smocks, the helmet covers, helmets, the field blue, the straps and back. I don't know. I just like these Army Painter. Okay. All Army Painter is not good. But there's only really one pack of Army Painter that I have not really liked, and that was the American Infantry. All the other Army Painters are good. Now, if you go through my What's in the Box videos, if you see that the Army Painter figure has a round base that would fit in a Flames of War style figure base, then they're probably the bulkier type figure, the heavier set figures that I personally like. All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming out and checking this video out and hearing my update. And continue to watch my channel for the battle group boot camps that I'm about halfway through. I need to continue. I guess the next one is going to be on artillery. And it is a big chapter. So it might take, I've been putting it off because I want to make sure I learn those artillery rules before I start teaching someone, So it's probably in the next couple of days I'll be able to film it and then upload it. So that's cool. And okay, I will see you in the next video.